Hello and welcome to another episode of Conversations with Annie and Kate. Hello, Annie.
Morning.
And welcome to Desirée Kozlowski.
Hi, good evening.
Now, Desirée is an Australian researcher and author who also runs the undergrad psychology program at Southern Cross University. She has a particular focus on pleasure and its relationship to human resilience, well-being and flourishing. And she also researches gender roles, which I think is a really fascinating thing. And that's why I ended up reaching out to her to come on the podcast. She also has a background in the corporate world, but now works on collaborative research projects. And interesting, she has a great academic background. And we're going to kick off with our questions. Do you want to do the first one, Annie?
Yes. So first question for you, Desirée, is what's the one thing that you've done in your life that you are most proud of?
The obvious answer is that I have a child who's absolutely magnificent, but I don't think I should go with that because it's just too obvious. So when I scan my life, the thing that I'm probably most proud of is keeping my inner child alive.
Oh, I love that.
That kind of optimism and mischief and fun and, you know, just still saying, no, well, this is actually who I am.
I love that. I think there's one thing that happens as we sort of leave childhood is that we're told that being playful and making a game out of things is just like, no, you've got to grow up now. What a shame, isn't it, to lose that, sort of, I call it the Peter Pan complex. I'm never going to grow up. I refuse. It's a trap.
Exactly. And I think we lose a lot when we lose that. And there's a lot of pressure to lose it. You know, I've been told directly, you know, are you taking this seriously? Well, yes, because I worked my bum off and, you know, we've achieved this and this. But, you know, we laugh as well. And, you know, we have some of that whimsy. You know, I love whimsy.
Whimsy is such a good word.
Yeah, and that's how we work in our team. We all work hard, but, you know, if you can't have a laugh, what's going on? That's crazy. We're serious, but not serious at the same time.
I think it's a blissful way to work. And I definitely have engineered my life to be able to do that. You know, I work with great people. I love students. I love researching with people with passion and curiosity and yes, courage, I guess. It takes courage to be like that when, you know, there's a lot of pressure to just be professional or something, you know.
Yeah, I do know because I'm always wearing joke t-shirts and jeans, and there's a lot of pressure on me to wear more serious clothes. And I was like, no, I'm not going to.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, today my t-shirt is.
I have to take. You guys, people know I love her.
So, you know, I do like a jokey t-shirt.
Hang on then. If we're doing the t-shirt rounds, let's get the hair out of the way.
That's a great one. I love that one.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's a joke and also highly nerdy.
Yes, exactly. That's lovely.
Combines the two things. All right, I'm going to ask my starter question. And I think probably what is the one thing that's most surprised you in your career?
The one thing that's most surprised me in my career is that it can change completely with one phone call or one email or one meeting. You know, those are the things that really just change your direction or enhance what you're doing, or, you know, this idea of knowing what you value is really important to being able to recognize an opportunity as an opportunity, because things don't go in that linear way. And I guess that's the surprising thing that I didn't know at the beginning, that I do know and am comfortable with now, that, it's not about going from one specific thing to another specific thing. It's about having more of what you value and being able to make more of a contribution in an area that you value. And often you might feel a little bit stale or not be sure that you're doing as much as you could. And that one phone call out of the blue can go, yes, this is great. I want to do this, and that's happened so often to me.
Oh, tell us about that.
Well, I probably shouldn't say anything too specific, and this mightn't actually come off. But recently, somebody called me out of the blue, inquiring about doing a master's or a PhD, and we had a chat, and it was nice, and we clicked. That old word, we clicked, and now we might be running this very exciting research project together. But the person that called me is not going to be the student. They're going to sort of be a collaborator. So that was just very exciting. And it was something that I didn't even know I was missing. But I think it is. I think I was missing that. And if that comes off, that would be enormous fun for a couple of years, which is exactly what I'm talking about.
Fabulous. So do you really keep an open sort of spirit to be open completely to that kind of thing?
Yes, absolutely. If I feel that I haven't got that amount of flexibility, I start to stifle. I have to have some freedom within it to sort of go a bit this way or a bit that way, I think.
And is that something that you've always known about yourself, Desirée, or is it something that you've learned over the years that you need that kind of freedom within your career profile to give you the balance you need?
I think it's definitely been an awareness that's grown over time. And maybe I didn't need it as much earlier. It's sort of building those bricks, and establishing certain, establishing expertise, I think, is a time where you can really be focused on that. Doing a PhD, you're really focused on that. And that's a good thing. You must be focused. But then I think after that, it's sort of been much more like I'm never going to be one of those people that probably publish in Nature or something because they've really devoted every iota of their brain power and their waking moments to this one particular topic. I have to be seeing those connections and seeing how things are real and fit in. And that idea of enriching the world in different ways is very attractive to me.
I mean, I'm really interested in how you ended up researching pleasure and how it evolved. How did that come about?
Well, I'm probably not that unique in liking pleasure. And, I had a friend once who said, what everybody should do is engineer things so that whatever they like is tax deductible. So I thought, I don't like any one thing. But it was that fascination. I actually had a fascination when I was a teenager with death and bereavement and palliative stuff. And back then I had this idea of becoming a psychologist and working in that area. But then 20 years or more encroached in that and different career paths and all of that. So when I was going in to do my honours in psychology many years later, my supervisor said to me, just tell me, what are you really interested in? And I said, well, I'm interested in, and I don't know if this is a commonly sort of known thing, they described it as, oh no, I can't even remember it. Is it petit mort and grand mort or something like that? The little death and the big death. So they're the two things that I was kind of interested in. They said, And over that year, I sort of realized that it's that general idea of pleasure, and pretty much all of us are kind of denied that in some way. You know, women are denied it because you're supposed to, you know, sublimate your needs to nurture others, and men are denied it because they're supposed to be sort of stoic and earning the money and all of that. You know, those old stereotypes come into this, but for one reason or another, nobody's supposed to be focusing on their own pleasure. You know, that's evil and, you know, not good for the world. So
where do all of those social constructs come from, though, Desiree? Because I think that's an interesting one. If men are not allowed to be their full selves because they need to, you know, take the stiff upper lip and be the man, never admit to their emotions, and women need to subjugate themselves to others to nurture. Who decided all of this? Where did it come from?
Well, this is something that I should know all about, but I don't know all that much about. I think that, you know, mainstream religions have a lot.
Patriarchy, don't we?
Yeah. Well, that would be convenient. That would be convenient and would serve many of our purposes. But I think it's, you know, sort of mainstream religion, which is another, you know, sort of personification of the patriarchy, I guess. But it doesn't serve men either. You know, it truly doesn't serve anyone. And I would argue that gender roles don't serve anyone at all, anywhere, ever, except in places and ways that we
except if you're part of the hierarchy of the church, which you know, when you're bought into that, you know, it's all set up for you.
It's true. That's true.
Yeah.
So that's a very few people, isn't it?
I know. So, you know, that's typical of religion, subjugating everybody so someone else can feel better about themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a form of control and power. And I have a PhD student right now who's researching humiliation and the social use of humiliation by political bodies or organizational bodies, or right down to friendship groups and that kind of. It's a way that we can control each other, because we know that these social connections and social dynamics are so very deeply important to us.
Oh, that's really interesting, because I'm doing some studies at Charles Sturt at the moment in terrorism, and I'm looking at QAnon and all of those things. Yeah. And there's a complete lack of that kind of ability to feel embarrassed about anything in those communities. It's fascinating.
But I bet they use it as a weapon against others.
Yeah, they do.
Because feeling that or experiencing that is at least in that context, it's a vulnerability, and people like that love others' vulnerabilities, don't they?
Yeah, it's really interesting. Oh, I forgot to ask, what are we drinking? I'm drinking gin and tonic.
Which gin, Kate?
Nice. I'm Gordon's, my Old Faithful.
The Old Faithful. It is a stoic representative in the gin cupboard, isn't it? I'm Yorkshire tea, good slug of milk. Happy days.
It is fairly early in the morning over there, though.
True. I reckon I could still do a gin and tonic.
Well, a trip to the gin aisle is very different to what it used to be 20 years ago, isn't it?
I know. It's now you got this cornucopia of wonderful choices. It's like
exactly.
Christmas.
Yeah.
What are you drinking, Desiree?
I'm drinking Coastal South Australian. It's Big Easy Radio Shiraz Mataro from 2016, I think. Yes. And it's very nice.
Sounds delightful. Annie, I found a really good gin. I'll buy you a bottle and ship it over.
Oh, look, anybody
it's
who promised...
French, so it'll be easy to get
A care package.
Kind of care I need in my life, people.
Perfect.
So
Desiree, go for it, Kate.
No, you go, Annie. You go.
I was going to ask about your earlier career to kind of get you to where you are today.
That's
Desiree.
what I was going to ask too.
Oh, look at that. Great minds. Is there anything that now you look back on and you can connect the dots of, oh, well, that all makes sense because it all sort of adds up to where I am now, versus perhaps, you know, when you first started out, the ability for you to chart your career path would have been impossible. What stands out for you in that sort of career history of, if I hadn't have done, those sliding doors moments where this could have changed my career immeasurably if I didn't take that risk or I didn't do that new thing. So what were those things that have influenced you in your career?
No, the things that pop out are not exactly probably what you're asking me, but it's related, I hope you'll find. And that is the absolute immense array of weird things I did that really you would, you know, if you were my mother, you would shake your head and go, oh my God, what the hell is she doing? So I did things like hosting. They used to have this thing called Dinner for Six, where 6 single people, I would organize a dinner for 6 single people. Of course, it was all very heteronormative, I'm afraid. At that stage, we had to have 3 females and 3 males and take them to dinner, and I would host. So that didn't last very long. But things like that, and like pulling beers at the Royal Hotel in Wellington in Western New South Wales, and all these things that were part of the adventure of just me being a rebel and going and trying different funny things. But they do so inform what I do now. And I don't think I would take the pleasure and the satisfaction from what I do now if I hadn't done those sort of weird things. You learn a lot about people. It's just about not being in a bubble, not just talking to like-minded people, not just thinking that there's one way to be and that's the best way to be. And that I was broken out of that really early. And thank you. You know, it's that thinking that there's one way to be and one way to communicate and one message to send is something that I find most sad in people when I meet them, if they're like that. It's such a waste. It's the opposite of richness. And, you know, now I guess working with a lot of different people, you know, students, etc., I don't have a particular set of expectations, and I think that's such an advantage.
I've got a question about students, because you're teaching undergrads now, aren't you?
I love them so much.
And
sorry.
No, I love them too. I keep saying anyone who's not optimistic for the future needs to go and spend some time with the kids because they're all right. But I was wondering, are they different? Are they different qualitatively from undergrads like 5 years ago in your view?
Some days I think yes, and some days I think no. I guess that I think there is more of an expectation to be kind of spoon-fed. We have, you know, a lot more students saying, but I didn't get 95. Something must be wrong with the marking. I didn't hear that for the first probably 5 or 6 years of my teaching. I never had heard such a thing, and it's now quite common. You know, it's quite common. So there, you know, people talk about entitlement. I think there may be a group of people who have developed this, well, you know, I'm paying for this education, you owe me. Like, you should tell me how to get 95. And I try and explain, well, actually, you know,
we do
is a pass. Yeah, we do. Well, I don't think I do tell people how to get a 95 in the stuff that I teach, because you really need to demonstrate insight. So how can I tell you this is how you I can give you examples, but then, you know, that kind of student tends to be quite literal and think, right, well, I have to have an insight that looks exactly like that, you know. So
I teach computer science and engineering, and literally I stand there and go, this slide will be in the exams. You should memorize this. And they don't. And then they come and go, why didn't I get? I was like, I told you.
Yeah.
So I was the other way around. When I was studying for my degree, I remember making a very conscious decision. So here in the UK, we have a slightly different grading structure. But so I needed to get a second class degree. So first is obviously our highest. It goes, of the second class degrees, you can get a 2-1, a 2-2. And if you got above a 2-2, that was standard kind of class of, you've done well. Most employers out there will look to you and say, yes, you're a good hire. It's like, all right, I'll aim for a 2-1, but I'm not aiming for a first. So I deliberately went through all of my exams and classes and kind of went, what's the minimum that I need to do to get the 2-1? And I remember going to get my final result at the end of the 3 years. And it was on one of those really big boards where it's all posted and everybody had to go and find it for themselves. And the pass mark for a 2-1 that year, because obviously it has to get graded on a curve before they tell you what the score is. And it was 61.7 and I got 61.9, and I've never been prouder of myself. It's like I didn't waste a session.
Anything, exactly.
And I can tell you, my final year, I went, even if it was only for one beer, I went to the bar every night for the final year. I nailed it.
That's called balance.
Isn't it? But I think it sort of goes back to your other point, Desiree, around, to be a full human being, to be your full self, you can't just be defined by one metric, whether it's I want the 95 or I want the perfect score. Well, okay, but did you experience the full raft of things that university can give you, and being away from home and studying new things and meeting new people and going to the really random kind of goth bar one night just to see what it's like versus just going to the standard corner pub that everybody from uni goes to. Like, I want it all. I want to experience all of it.
That's perfect. And I teach psychology, and many of our students want to be psychologists. Not by far, not all of them do become that in the end, but like, if you go to a psychologist, do you want it to be that person who just stayed in a room for 6 years trying to get 95? No, that is the last person that I would go to as a psychologist. Sorry, I would want the person that struggled a little bit and overcome difficulties and got down among all kinds of people. And, so I guess that's absolutely a personal opinion. These may not represent the opinions of my employer, but that's what I think. That's who we want to talk to in a room if we're encountering difficulties.
Because you've had an interesting kind of studyship sort of career path as well, haven't you, Kate? Because you've kind of gone, was it studying history,
anthropology and philosophy as
right,
a young kid, and then I had to drop out, and then I went back and did management, and now I've done tertiary education. So,
well, tertiary education. All right. How many degrees do you have now, Kate?
I've only got 2. I'm doing a third right now.
Sounds more. You're trying to cover some up, aren't you, Kate?
They were articulated degrees, so I got them by pieces. But I'm doing a Master of Cyber Security and Terrorism at the moment.
Wow. I'm doing nothing.
That'll be really fast. That'll be knocked over in by halfway through next year.
I paid off my HECS a year ago, and now I'm terrified of studying. I'm so wealthy now.
I know my HECS limit, and I'm going to spend the whole lot of it.
I probably did do that, but now I've paid it off, and I'm thinking, really? Do you want to lose those $200 a week or whatever it is? It's a lot. So no, I probably will study something again one day. But
they talk about lifelong learning, but I'm not sure they've really thought it through, because you get people like me who are real magpies who pick up different things and are quite interested in different things, and kind of the academic world really rewards people for studying a single thread throughout.
I know.
And where I work, there's a whole lot of people who went to university as an undergraduate there, went right through to their PhD and then got a job in the place, and they've never left. And I'm like, you need to leave. It's good for you to go somewhere else.
Well, I have worked at 2 other unis with research, but I did finish the last bit of my undergrad degree at Southern Cross University, did my honours and my PhD there, and now I work there. So I'm a little bit like that, but I was like 120 when I started, so I don't think it counts as like,
But you had life experience elsewhere.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's I think, really valuable. And I think anybody who stays in one place for a really long time, even if it is a lot of jobs, like where Annie works, I know a lot of people work there for a really long time, and they have a plethora of jobs, which is really good. But they actually would benefit probably from going outside and experience a different kind of organisation. Yeah, I think, anyway.
Yeah. That one idea, it goes back to what I was saying before. Anybody that thinks there's one right way to do things or anything, I'm very nervous about that. Very nervous. There's so many different ways that you can, tell me what you'd like to achieve, and let's think of a nice, easy way that won't hurt anybody to get there.
Also, just your concept of scale. So I can remember I worked at AMP late last century. I left in 2000, and I went to GE, and I used to think AMP was a big business. And GE was just enormous. It was so large. And I was there going, I thought I knew what a large organisation was, but my mind was utterly blown. And, just that difference in scale, I would have never understood it if I hadn't done it.
Yep. It's interesting.
And hilariously, really both of those brands are now trash. It's hilarious.
Well, I was going to say you got out just in time, but I thought that would have to be bleeped.
No, we're very honest about.
There's no bleeping. There's no bleeping here.
No bleeping.
Well, where Annie works has had a big resurgence with the new CEO. The entire organisation has been revitalised.
It's interesting, isn't it, how everything has its day, or for every up there's a big down, for every down there's an up. You just need to ride it and sort of, or get your timing right. And so I worked for Microsoft, and sort of 7 or 8 years ago, it was struggling as a brand to really sort of resonate with its customers anymore, and it frankly had turned into quite a sales-led organization, which that's not really what Microsoft has ever been. It's always been an engineering-led one. So Satya Nadella took over a few years back, and he is an engineer through and through. And that's what he's kind of reminded everybody, that's the DNA of who we are and what we stand for. And it's just been fascinating to see how quickly the organization can snap back to that. And then also in a time when technology we're I think, a bit of a fulcrum when it comes to large tech companies in terms of how they show up in the world and what they stand for. And I think, whilst every large company, and Microsoft isn't completely perfect, it has a balance of choices to make as a business. But on the balance of it, on the whole, I think Microsoft is doing pretty good work right now. Obviously, because I work there.
She's kind of biased, but no, what I observe is that if that is true. But Desiree, I wanted to ask you about, because one of the things when I first started to get to know you on Twitter, because you're another person that I know from Twitter, I started.
Don't hate us.
I googled your I looked you up in Google Scholar, and you had all this fascinating research that I read a bunch of it about the importance of emotional intelligence in clinical settings. And how did you get onto that as a thing? Because that was really interesting.
It is really interesting, and that is something that I'm getting, again, sort of way more active in that area, I think. It sort of flows from the pleasure stuff. A lot of that is, it might just sound like pure indulgence and hedonism and all of that, but a lot of that is actually about self-management. So emotional self-management, being aware of our emotional palette and, how to work with that. And it was a natural kind of progression to look at EQ or EI. And I was collaborating with some colleagues, some really wonderful colleagues who I still work with and have contact with. One in Melbourne and a couple at our university, and we got a little grant, to do some stuff that we wanted to do. And one of the things was, it was around healthcare workers and specifically nurses is the project that we were doing. But part of that, we wanted to do a review to look at the role of emotion in clinical decision making. And I think that is the paper that really was pivotal, and I still love that paper. And what we found from a review of the literature is everybody treats clinical decision making as this kind of hypothetico-deductive, purely rational process, and completely denies the existence of any emotion in that. And it's actually there. It imbues everything. And, to sort of be able to point that out and articulate that a little bit was exciting. And that's then sort of, I guess, fueled our interest to look at EQ and how it can make a contribution, because it's a little bit dinky, the reputation of EQ or EI, has been a bit dinky and not very scientific. And I think that's not true. And some of the instruments are definitely improving, but just to talk to people who've had a chance to work on this and practice it, had some coaching in it, to hear what they say about the difference that it's made in every sphere of their life is the most exciting thing. So that's something that does light my fire. We've done some work with academically at-risk students, and those of them who take this up, it has really a powerful effect on them. But the problem is lots of them don't take it up when it's free. So this is my current very hard nut to crack, is when there's something that's available, a resource, why do certain students or certain people not take it up?
Yep. Yeah. Yes, it's an interesting dilemma, but that we've got at our place too. But it's also, I suspect it's something about the free.
Yeah, maybe. About the value, the perceived value.
Yeah. So
it's a human value. I think we're wired to it as a human being. If something's free, that it's not valuable. We see it a lot in the startup community as well. So there's some certainly matching there.
Interesting.
I have another question for you, Desirée, around sort of how do you keep going? When perhaps you're feeling frustrated, or you're just banging your head against a brick wall of students not doing what they're told, or just even from a research perspective, oftentimes those can be very long timelines from the idea or the thing that you're trying to prove or disprove, and then actually getting to the results. What keeps you going? How do you keep motivated every day?
It's got to be for me, it's got to be a blend. So my family is really important. I know that I'm an introvert, believe it or not, even though I talk a lot and do a lot of things. I need to have a lot of time without other people. And I've designed over years my entire life so that I live here on the mid-north coast of New South Wales, 400 metres from the beach, 100 metres from the creek. I don't want to go on an overseas holiday. I don't want to, do so many things. What I want and what I need and what feeds me and fuels me is to be able to wander to the creek or the beach, take the boogie board out, do a bit of yoga, have dinner with my husband, preferably he cooks, go for a walk with my mum, all of those things. But those things don't take a lot of time. But if they don't happen, that's when I'm crabby as hell. And I start going, bloody students, what do they expect? And the minute that thought comes into my head, I think, oh, okay, not meeting my own needs.
Time to go to the beach.
I need to go to the beach, possibly for quite a while. So that's it, and most of the time I'm stuffing that up in one that here it sounds like I've got this fabulous handle on it all, but most of the time it's out of balance in one way or the other. But overall, it seems to be okay.
But that's life. If life and work balance is always the challenge to sort that out. I think it's always got to be out of balance in one way or the other, because it's hard to be in perfect balance.
Yeah, and I mean, you wouldn't get anything done at work. Well, I wouldn't get anything achieved if I was every day making sure I was having my perfect, personal, recharge time, because there's just weeks and weeks where that doesn't happen, and that needs to be like that to achieve something, But then when it's over, I'd make sure that things come back in, flow back in.
But it sounds like you have a pretty strong understanding of your boundaries so that you can play with them.
That's developed over time and is far from perfect, but yes, I think they're not bad now. There's been times when I've made myself sick because I've taken on way too much work. And, when it's an 8-month project, it's like, well, that's it. I just need to ignore myself for 8 months and just get to the end of this. Not that I'm talking about any specific project, of course. 8 months is just an arbitrary term that I plucked from the ether. But, those things happen. But And I still would do that. If it's something that really excites me, I'm willing to go out of balance for a while, but over a year, it kind of has to work out.
And I think, one of the interesting things that you just said there, though, is that's a conscious decision, and, it's something that you're aware you're taking on. That's a kind of different way of explaining that there's still balance there, because you've chosen to be imbalanced in one facet of your life, because you can get it back again afterwards. It's a time period, it's not forever, and there's a reason, perhaps because you more than likely believe in that project and you want to be a part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that articulating that to ourselves is pretty important, and I have come to be able to articulate, I'm nearly 60, I don't own a house, but I live in a most amazing place. And, that's my choice. I don't go on overseas holidays, as I said before, because I don't want to. I want every day to have that available to me. And those are all choices. And when we start to think that it's not a choice, that's when we're in trouble. Humans don't like to, and I think a lot of us, I observe a lot of people acting as though that wasn't a choice. It generally was at some point, and I think it's really important to kind of own that.
So have you got some advice for perhaps some younger people that are watching us?
You mean if they want to be 58 and not own a house? And
no, just how you're a psychologist. You've got all this.
I'm not a psychologist.
Oh no,
it's a protected term.
Oh no, not a psychologist.
I'm not
a psychologist.
Yep,
but you understand psychology. And,
I do, and
you've got all this interesting life experience. Have you got any tips? What kind of tip would you give to your younger self, for example?
The tip that I'd give to my younger self is nothing matters as much as you think it does. Mm-hmm. There's a million ways to be happy, not just one, even though when you're young, it feels like you must have this, this position or this person in your life or this whatever. And none of that matters at all. It's recognize your values and keep that close. And reassess, critical self-reflection, I think, is hard, it's uncomfortable, but it's essential to sort of land in that place where you're fully comfortable and you can sort of blossom a little bit, I reckon.
That is marvelous. Thank you so much. I think this is a really good place for us to finish. Thank you so much, Desiree. Thank you, Annie. It's lovely to see you. And this will be going live very shortly. So thanks for everyone for watching. Don't forget, please like us and leave us a nice review because that would be nice. Thanks.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.